Connection, opportunity, possibility. It's what we all want. Spectrum has built a world where anything is possible, with products and services designed to work better together for a seamless connectivity experience. A connection to family and friends, a connection to education, and a connection to new opportunities. So there's no limit to how big we can dream. That's Life Unlimited. That's Spectrum.
Welcome to Mind Love, episode 69. Today's episode is all about using Ayurveda to crush your goals, find your purpose, and live your dharma.
I really channeled my pitta, which did not come naturally to me. I very much considered myself like the vata, creative, idea, traveler, but not the pitta. But because my dharma was really on the line here, I had to bring the pitta through. So I started to do boxing and to eat a lot of ginger and actually shift myself into a pitta through my diet and lifestyle. I did everything I could, and the book started to be shared more and people started to resonate with it.
Don't worry, guys, we'll learn all these terms in this episode.
Turn up your frequency with Mind Love. Bite-sized brain hacks for seekers, dreamers, and doers. It's time to give your mind a little love with your host, Melissa Monti.
Mind Love is a CastBox original. You can still listen to Mind Love wherever you get your podcasts, but CastBox is pretty awesome, so I hope you'll give it a try. And tap that cute little button that says subscribe. More subscribers means even better guests and even more value. Plus, it helps grow the show, so more people can find it, and if you ask me, everyone can use a little more Mind Love. Hello, friends and fellow wild women. Today we're going back to a topic that we've covered before, and that is Ayurveda. But I'm excited because whereas the last episode focused more on the health and wellness aspect of Ayurveda, we're going to make it a little bit more applicable to today's world and learn how to use it to crush your goals. Ayurveda is the world's oldest holistic healing system, developed over 3,000 years ago in India. And it's based on the belief that health and wellness depend on the delicate balance between mind, body, and spirit. So really everything is connected. And in Sanskrit, it actually means the science of life. So way back in episode 24, we talked about using Ayurveda for healing, like how to spot imbalances and how to regulate those imbalances with food. So if you think of the science of life, you can kind of think of Ayurveda like a chemistry. So depending on the makeup of our individual bodies, what we put into them will react differently for different people. So today, rather than focus so much on the health and wellness aspect, I wanted to know how we can use Ayurveda for other outcomes in our life, like living our purpose, actually following through on those goals, and overcoming some of the most common things that hold us back depending on our different doshas or our mind-body types. So today will be really fun because you'll be able to figure out what dosha you are and what that means when it comes to how you tackle your goals or interact with the world, and then how to use different principles of Ayurveda to counterbalance that depending on if there's an excess or a deficiency. So for a little preview, for me, sometimes I get too in my vata, which is that creative air energy, and I need something more grounding to actually start getting stuff done. But other times I'm so much in that masculine, so much in the do, that I find it hard to step back and receive some of that creative energy. So we're going to learn what to do in all of those situations. And today we're talking to Sahara Rose. She's the best-selling author of Eat, Feel Fresh and The Idiot's Guide to Ayurveda. Deepak Chopra called her a leading voice for the millennial generation into a new paradigm shift. And she's also the host of the Highest Self podcast. She loves to make spiritual and Ayurvedic wisdom fun and relatable so that it can actually serve the needs of people today. 3 key things we will learn are how to identify your different doshas, how our mind-body types can be affected with age and even the climate we're living in, and some fun, easy, modern ways to bring imbalances back into balance. Before we dive in, I want to share the easiest way to start each day with a positive mindset. Thousands of other wild women are loving my daily morning Mind Love emails. They're short daily reminders of your own beauty, magic, and power that are the perfect addition to your morning routine. Just visit mindlove.com and sign up right there on the homepage. Or if you're out and about, just text the word morning to 33777. That's morning to 33777. You'll get some amazing free gifts when you do. First, you'll get a really cool free booklet of Power Lists based on proven principles from the most successful people to automate your best self. Plus, you'll get a free guided affirmation meditation. It's set to a magical binaural frequency known as the miracle tone, which is known to make you a magnet for love, health, and abundance. The layered affirmations perfectly tune your frequency for personal transformation. Go to mindlove.com to sign up, or if you're out and about, just text the word morning to 444-999. That's morning to 444-999. And now let's welcome Sahara Rose to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So how did you first discover Ayurveda, and why was such an ancient, holistic tradition relevant to your life at such a young age?
Yeah, so I was introduced to it because I was in desperate need of it. I had really bad health problems, starting with digestive issues. It was really hard for me to eat anything without being in significant pain. And then later, I had bad hormonal problems. I didn't get my period for 2 years. I lost a lot of weight, a lot of hair. I would faint all the time, injure a lot of joints, couldn't sleep at night, really bad insomnia, really bad anxiety, and went to so many different doctors for all these different problems, gastroenterologists, endocrinologists, therapists, everything in between. And they just kept prescribing me a new medication. And I knew that I was too young to have all of these problems. Something was going on deeper in my body, but no doctor really had the time to figure out what that thing was. So I just went on to start healing myself through Google. I would Google different diets and nutrition information and research and try everything under the sun. And nothing really was working. And eventually I had heard of Ayurveda in my health coaching course and was sort of familiar with it, but didn't really know what it was. And while I was living in India, I was teaching health and sanitation in the slums of Delhi. I decided that I would go visit an Ayurvedic doctor. Again, thinking, whatever, I've tried everything at this point, might as well see what this person can say. And the moment she saw me, she was able to see that my body and my mind were out of balance. She quickly was able to see that I had all of my digestive issues, hormonal issues, but also the mental issues too from just looking at me. And for the first time, she started to tell me about vata imbalance, too much air in the system, and I felt so understood. Finally, there was one imbalance that put together all of these different problems I faced into a group, and I could see that they were all interconnected: the mind, the body, the digestion, hormones, bones, everything.
So when did Ayurveda go from being something that you were just looking into for personal reasons to this whole lifestyle and eventually a business?
So I wanted to learn everything there is about it. And I started to read all about Ayurveda. I decided to sign up for Ayurveda school. And the moment I started learning it, it was like relearning a language that my soul once spoke for many, many lifetimes. And I started to just fully dive in. It was all I could think about, care about. But the more I dived in, the more I saw that there was a need for it to be modernized, and that a lot of what Ayurveda says made sense for ancient India 5,000 years ago. But today, our bodies are so different. Our food is so different. Our lifestyles are so different. So we can't live and eat the same way they did 5,000 years ago, when they didn't have refrigeration back then. They didn't have a crock pot back then. They didn't have GMOs back then. So, as much as I loved Ayurveda, I really saw the need for it to become modernized. And I would look for books, for websites, for information about it. Couldn't find anything. So, my spirit guides were like, okay, girl, I guess you're going to have to do it. So, I didn't know anything about writing a book. I had never met an author. I didn't know anything about the process. I was like, okay, I'll just write an ebook and put it on my blog and see what happens. So that 50-page ebook became 100 pages, 200 pages, 500 pages, 1,000 pages, 2,000 pages that I was just channeling through. And eventually I was like, this is just so much content that needs to be out there, needs to help people who have the health, the mental, the digestive issues that I have too. And I want to see this on the shelf of Barnes and Nobles. And that's how my journey started of writing this book, which eventually became part of the Idiot's Guide series, the Idiot's Guide to Ayurveda, and then eventually writing my own modernized version, which is Eat Feel Fresh, which is a contemporary plant-based Ayurvedic cookbook, eliminating the heavy use of dairy products. There's no dairy products at all, eliminating the heavy use of a lot of rice and breads and heavily cooked foods, including superfoods from around the world, including inspiration from blue zones, areas with the world's longest lifespans, and including more of the spiritual component too, because now looking back on it, I can see that a lot of my health issues were related to the spiritual issues that were happening in my life at that time. Not only was I eating a lot of raw foods, which increases vata, traveling, which increases vata, living in a cold place, which increases vata, but I also didn't know what I was doing with my life. I also was confused. I also was worried. I was at this place where I had studied to become an international human rights lawyer, and here I was with all these health problems. This wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't want to do this. This was essentially brought to me. Now I can say gifted to me, but at that time it didn't feel like a gift. It felt like a sentence, a curse. And now I see that everything that happens to you, your mess is your message. And I had to go through those health problems myself to be in that position to understand what so many other people are going through. So many, especially young women, don't get their periods, have such bad IBS. It's so common these days. And there's a reason for it. It has to do with not only the pesticides, the GMOs, the chemtrails, but it has to do with this lack of tribe, this lack of spirit, this lack of consciousness, this phone that is taking over our community. Like, this is actually what is causing our health problems, and this distraction that is keeping us from knowing ourselves and thus knowing our purpose here. So really it started with food and health and physical, and it transcended into mental and spiritual.
I love when things seem to start with just pulling that single thread, and then eventually you just unravel this whole life purpose that's taken on an energy of its own. It's just so cool to see how it really is oftentimes our biggest hardships or our biggest life challenges that turn into our message. When our mess becomes our message, that's when it feels so powerful and so intimate of a purpose for each one of us, because it's what we needed the most. So it's really easy to convince ourselves that it's something that's so needed for other people too. So I love that. I want to go back to your original health issues for a minute. That's a lot to deal with as such a young person. Hair falling out, infertility. I think with the American diet, most of us have some imbalance, but yours was pretty extreme. What was all of that stemming from?
Yeah, it started with me having digestive problems, which is super common. A lot of people do. I would feel really bloated all the time, constipation, gas. So that made me eliminate a lot of foods from my diet, and that eventually brought me to the raw vegan diet. And I had also been overweight as a kid, so I wanted to lose weight too. So the raw vegan diet, which was really serving me for the first 8 months, but after that's when the health problems really started, because it was way too cooling for where I lived in Boston. And I mean, coconut water and pineapples are not indigenous to the snow. And so I was not eating locally or seasonally at all. And then also at the same time, the mental stuff was happening. I mean, your digestion is related to your solar plexus, which is related to your identity. So I was losing the sight of who am I, because I had been living my whole life wanting to be this human rights lawyer. And then I didn't know if that was even my destiny. I had worked in different jobs like that and I didn't like it. And I had such bad health issues that I couldn't really think about anything else. When your health is out of whack, that just becomes your number one priority. So I think it was both. It was the diet, it was the mental. And then also, I think there's destiny. I think that it had to happen to me. I think it was part of my soul contract here on this planet to have experienced all of that so I can know what it's like, and that I can proudly say today that I don't have any of those problems at all. And the only thing that I shifted is my mindset and the foods that I eat.
before we go deep today, I want to give you a little gift, and I want to give it to you every single day. It's called the Morning Mind Love. I know how life can be. You're all fired up after an inspiring episode, and then a new day or a new challenge comes at you, and it's just hard to keep up that energy. Well, the Morning Mind Love is kind of like an oracle from your higher self to help you start each day with a positive focus. Plus, when you sign up, you get 2 free gifts, a 30-minute binaural meditation and 30 days of journaling prompts to help you remember who you truly are. And it's all completely free. So join over 9,000 people and go to mindlove.com to sign up, or text the word morning to 33777. You know what I love about the start of a new year? It's kind of like opening a fresh notebook. 365 blank pages just waiting to be filled with your story. But sometimes we get stuck trying to write that story alone. Maybe there's a chapter you've been wanting to revise, or maybe you're just ready for a whole new plot twist in 2025. But here's what I've learned from my own journey with therapy. It's kind of like having an editorial partner for your life story. Someone who helps you see the patterns that you might have missed, who gives you the tools to write stronger chapters ahead. And that's why I'm so excited about BetterHelp. They've made therapy accessible and easy, serving over 5 million people worldwide. With over 30,000 credentialed therapists, each with different specialties, you can find someone who really gets your unique story. But what I love is how flexible it is. Everything is online, and you can easily switch therapists anytime at no extra cost until you find the perfect fit. And it's not just for people that are dealing with major challenges. Therapy can help anyone become the best version of themselves. So write your story with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/mindlove today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/mindlove. So we have done an episode on Ayurveda before, but it was early 2018. But I remember that was one of the episodes that really intrigued me. And I remember thinking, I'm going to learn all about Ayurveda. So I'm really glad to be having this refresher because, as you can tell, I do not know all about Ayurveda right now. So can you remind us, what are doshas and what are the different types?
Yeah, so the word dosha means energy, and there are 3 main energy types. These energy types are based off of the 5 elements. So just like we have elements like air, earth, fire, water, space, we have these within our bodies. So vata is air and space. I like to just think of it as the wind because it's cold and dry like the wind. Pitta is fire and water. I like to just think of it as fire because it is 2/3 mostly fire, but also fire and water are the 2 strongest elements. And kapha is earth and water. So think the earth, dense, heavy. So vata, air, pitta, fire, kapha, earth. So we all have all 3 of these doshas within us, but in varying amounts. So someone that has a lot of vata mentally, a lot of air energy, is someone who's really creative. They're eccentric, they're imaginative, they think outside the box, they move quickly between things. They're like little fairies. They're like, I want to do this, I want to do that. They're very easily excited. And then physically, someone that has a lot of vata, that's going to mean air. So bloating, gas, constipation, dry skin, dry hair, cracking joints, and pretty much all of the issues that I was talking about, like low period or no period, that's all vata related. So think air. What would the air look like? Pitta is fire. So think, what's a fiery personality? Like this is someone who is driven, passionate, strong, courageous. And the flip side of that is they can be maybe angry or impatient or frustrated. And then physically, too much heat in the system will make you feel hot, sweaty, irritable. When you're hot and bothered, it's like, get this off of me. Like that's that pitta feeling. And then in the digestive system, it's hyperacidity, too much stomach acid, which leads to ulcers, inflammation, rosacea, rashes, irritation, sensitivity. That's all related to pitta. Now, kapha is earth. So mentally, they're calm, peaceful, loving, sweet. They're connected to the earth. If you've ever heard someone like Eckhart Tolle speak, he talks a little bit like this. And you either love it or hate it because you're either like, oh, that feels so amazing. It feels like a meditation. Or you're like, hurry up. What do you want to say?
I definitely listened to The Power of Now on 2.5 or 3x.
That's that cough that he has. Whereas if you go to Tony Robbins, he's like, come on, let's do it. Jump, jump, jump. Make some noise. Clap your hands. And like, that's the pitta right there. And if you go to Steve Jobs or Joe Dispenza, it's like all this information. It's so heady. And that's the vata right there. Because vata, it's the air. It wants to leave the body. Pitta is fire. It wants to feel things. Kapha is earth. It wants to settle in. So the kapha with that calm anchoring, I think of it as grandmother energy or Oprah energy. If you think about Oprah, why do we love her?
Free cars?
Because she can sit and listen.
Oh, that too.
It's the empathy. It's the ability to hold space. What does the earth do? It holds space. But when there's excess of that, that's when you become stuck. That's when you become resistant to change. That's when you say, oh, well, things are okay just the way they are. I don't need to change anything. It's fine. I'm used to it. Even if it's not the best job that serves you, the best relationship that could serve you. But the energy that it takes to change feels like just too much. So you stay stuck in that kapha rut, as I like to call it. And then physically, that kapha makes you feel heavy, slumpy, tired, lethargic, and leads to weight gain because you're not exercising, you're not moving, and oftentimes you're emotionally eating. Kaphas are empaths. They give so much to others, so they need to take back in. They eat. So that weight gain, we know Oprah, that has been her lifelong issue. She's losing weight, gaining weight, losing weight, gaining weight. And that's related to the kapha imbalance that really needed to be treated before anything else. And she speaks a lot about how her life lesson has been learning to say no to people because she wants to say yes to everyone. That's so kapha right there. Robin Williams making the world laugh, but we didn't know what was going on with him. So that going to make you feel more dense, more heavy. And kaphas tend to gain weight in their hips and their thighs. And if you think about it, it's like it's anchoring. It's anchoring you down deeper into earth. Whereas pittas, they tend to be more muscular, more strong, more angular. Think Madonna, think Brad Pitt, think Jennifer Aniston, because they're very regiment. They have their gym schedule, their food schedule. They're like the type A personalities. So they think of their bodies as the same way Jennifer Lopez, she's like fuego, 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 like every song. And that's her pitta right there. Whereas vata is like physically can be that tall, lanky person. Think Ashton Kutcher, Natalie Portman, Keira Knightley, that they're like, oh, I forgot to eat today. I'm like, what? How does that happen?
Meanwhile, I'm over here trying to not chew into the microphone.
But they're not even attached to food really because they're so up in the air.
So I took your quiz on finding your dosha on your website. And it's interesting because I found myself torn between some of the responses. Before I suffered from bulimia and then after I suffered from bulimia. So I feel like when I was younger, I was more pitta. I naturally gained muscle. I'm pretty lean. But then once I developed bulimia, I mean, that's when the binges and the purges started. So it's almost like I switched something in my brain. And even now, I have to really watch myself to not overeat at certain times, those binge eating tendencies. So I'm wondering, can those doshas that you identify with change over time or based on your life experiences?
Yes, absolutely. So the dosha constitution we were born with is called our prakriti, natural born constitution, or DNA. So you may have been born more pitta or more vata, never had an issue with gaining weight, which is more of a kapha imbalance. But then this time period of your life, I had an eating disorder too. So I always relate the eating disorders to the doshas. And I see bulimia as a kapha imbalance, actually, because it's that heaviness, that resistance to feeling stuck, feeling anchored. You don't want that. So that's when you start to purge. And that can, again, trigger more of the kapha to happen, because then your body is saying, well, I don't have the food that I need in me, so I need to hold on to more, hold on to more. It becomes more dense, more heavy, more stuck, more kapha. Whereas anorexia, or what what I was eating just raw foods, that's more of the Vata imbalance because Vata wants to feel very light. It wants to escape from the physical body, be up in the ethos. So it's like, food, like I'm just not going to eat that so I can feel really up here. And that is going to trigger all of the Vata issues, all of the issues I had, bloating, gas, constipation, which are all air, anxiety, insomnia. And then Pitta is very related to orthorexia, which is obsession with healthy eating, really tracking your macros, really making sure that it's not sprayed in any way and like to an unhealthy level, because Pitta likes to fixate on things. So we see a lot of those orthorexic tendencies with bodybuilders and fitness coaches, etc. They're not skipping meals, but they're probably in between meals only thinking about the meals. So we can have different life experiences that shift our prakriti, our natural born constitution, not just eating disorders, but anything related to your diet or lifestyle. Maybe you got pregnant. Maybe you moved to a place with a different climate. If you live somewhere that's cold and dry, that will trigger Vata. Hot and humid, that will trigger Pitta. Cold and wet, like London or somewhere snowy, that would trigger Kapha. So all of these things can shift our dosha, which creates our Vikriti, our current doshic constitution. So Ayurveda says the way we can achieve ultimate health is to bring our Vikriti back to our Prakriti. So we can be operating as the way that we were naturally intended to be. And as life throws curveballs at us, as the seasons change and lifestyle circumstances happen, to shift back, to rebalance that dosha that is in excess, even if it's not that dosha that you were born with, you're always just rebalancing what's showing up for you at this moment so you can go back to the way that you were naturally born.
Wow, I'm already planning. Okay, so when I need to go right, I'm going to go take a trip to the cold, dry mountains. Or if I need to get stuff done, I'll go to a tropical climate. Vacation excuses. It's just cool because something that I originally looked at as more of just a health and wellness modality is actually really applicable to all these other areas of life. It actually seems like it would be a really good way to be able to read other people, even just based on their body type or their habits or how they carry themselves.
We can see it. And once you're able to see these doshas, and it comes really intuitively, you're able, everyone that you meet, your partner, your mom, your coworkers, you're able to see what dosha they are. And then you're able to connect with them in a deeper way, because then you know if your assistant is a kapha and you come in yelling at her, that's really going to hurt her. Whereas if it's more of a pitta, that person's going to like, I don't know, maybe yell back at you. If it's more of a vata, they're going to be like, whatever. So it just helps you with business, with relationships, with everything. I love talking about it in different areas of life besides just food and health, because I really do believe it's a map to, it's like Myers-Briggs or Enneagram, but like the most ancient way that all of this stuff is based on.
When I look at the arc of my life, when I started to clear up my eating disorder, that's when a lot changed elsewhere in my life also. Obviously, everything's connected, and also, obviously, I had a lot of extra time not binging and purging, but when my eating disorder was the worst, it was also when I was stuck in a lifestyle that was not only unfulfilling, but unhealthy in other ways. But for some reason, I couldn't lift myself out of it. So I can see how that was a lot of kapha energy or kapha imbalance there. And then when I first started to clear up my eating disorder, I actually think I was limiting my calories too much. I still had a huge body image disorder, so I was really afraid of gaining weight. So yeah, I stopped beating up my body through binging and purging, but I was restricting and starving my body in another way. Well, you mentioned that not eating is more of a vata imbalance. And at the time that was happening, I had just started listening to a lot of business podcasts, and I had so many ideas of what I wanted to create, but I couldn't seem to take action or follow through on any of them. And when I finally started to find balance, things in my life started to change. And yeah, I can attribute it to all of these other different things in my life, but maybe it's really as simple as that balance helped everything else to fall in line too. Whenever I take a quiz, I get a result, and at first I love feeling seen, like this test understands me. But then I start looking at the other results and immediately start saying, well, I kind of relate to that one too, or I used to relate more to this, or am I this, or do I just think I'm this?
Keep in mind that they change with our age too. So in Ayurveda, we have lifespan cycles. So when you're young, we're all more in the kapha phase because we're building our blocks for the rest of our lives. That's why kids tend to have baby fat. They tend to have chubby cheeks. They tend to get cold, phlegm, mucus. They're always like having runny noses. That's the kapha within them. They need that. If they are just like lanky when they're little kids, they could fall and actually hurt themselves. So nature provides us with that cushioning. Whereas the middle of our life, that's when our pitta goes up. That's when you're like, okay, I need to figure out how I'm going to survive, if I'm going to get my job right, if I'm going to get my spouse right. It's a lot of pressure and a lot of stress. And that's why the universe provides us with the fire to get it done. It's that youthful energy. Whereas the later part of our life, so when we move into the vata, when we're kind of letting go of this physical body and we're moving into what mistakes did I make in my life? What would I have done differently? Like my grandpa was professional boxer, like most famous boxer in Iran, like army general, like super pitta masculine. And now he just like sits and writes poetry and is a vegan. And I'm like, that's his vata. And then you can also see that vata later on in life is when a lot of dementia happens, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, which is related to the mind, excess vata, shaking hands, excess vata, whereas middle of the life is heart attack, stroke, related to the heart. Earlier in life, it's allergies, mucus, that sort of stuff. So even the imbalances show up in different stages of our lives, and they change with the seasons too. Cold, dry season, fall, vata, winter, early spring, kapha, summer, pitta. So I have all of these in my book, Idiot's Guide to Ayurveda. Even times of day are related to different doshas. So it's not like I'm just pitta and that's it. That's the only one I have to balance. It's always changing. And that's why it's really important to understand all three doshas. So then you're able to see, okay, I'm feeling really kapha right now. Maybe it's because I haven't worked out in a long time, or I'm feeling really vata. Maybe it's because I'm really traveling. Feeling really pitta. Maybe it's because I'm really overworking, and then rebalance that dosha.
Well, I'm really curious about just these Ayurvedic doshas in relationship to how we approach our purpose and getting things done. So I want to go back for a second to where everything started. I just love stories where what started as a healing for ourselves then becomes how we help heal the world. How did you manage to write The Idiot's Guide to Ayurveda? That's a pretty big name book. And so it's an amazing accomplishment for a first time author.
Well, it was actually a lot of struggle. I think things after, but when you're going through it, yeah. So I didn't just get a book deal. It really started with me writing what I thought would be an ebook, spending all my money. I was health coaching at the time, not making too much, but everything I would make, I would give it all to editors, graphic designers, etc. So I eventually created a full-on book called Eat Right for Your Mind Body Type. And I shopped it. I didn't even know how to get a book into Barnes and Noble. So I kind of reverse engineered and figured out you need a literary agent, and the literary agent does this. So eventually I met someone who knew a literary agent, and she gave it to probably 30 different publishers, and they all said no. They all echoed back to me the same fears that I had in my head. You're too young. No one cares. No one knows what Ayurveda is. This isn't going to happen. It's too complicated. These words, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, are not even in English. It's confusing for people. Just flat out, no, not even a see you later. This isn't happening. So even she was like, yeah, I've really tried. It's not going to happen. And just something deeper within me just knew that I had to get this book out to really be of service to people. So then I was kind of going back into like, okay, well, how am I going to make money in my life? Like, I can't just be this like kind of half health coach, half author that doesn't have a book out. So I tried to become a real estate agent, and I tried so many different career ideas because I didn't know how this would happen. I thought this Ayurveda thing would just be a hobby of mine, and that's it. And then eventually that literary agent gets a call from the Idiot's Guide group in Penguin Random House, and they were looking for someone to write the official Idiot's Guide to Ayurveda. And they had an author who was 4 months into her 6 months, and she quit because it was so much work. And it's not like you just write whatever you want. It's a very specific tone, very specific format. It's like a math problem to write these kind of books. And so she was like, well, I know this Ayurveda girl. I don't know if you're interested. And they're like, okay, I don't know, I guess we'll see what would her sample table of contents be. So they sent me that previous author's table of contents and asked me how I would edit it. And I just knew this is my chance, like as a publisher. So I just channeled source, like tapped into my inner knowing. And I did not use any of the table of contents they sent me. I wrote an entirely new one and I sent it back at the end of the day. And they're like, okay, well, if you were to write the first chapter, how would you write it? So I went to Barnes and Nobles. I probably read 40 different Idiot's Guide books to understand how they write. And I stayed up the whole night and I wrote that first chapter and I sent it back. And then 2 days later, they're like, okay, you're hired. You have this 400-page textbook to write in this very specific way in 2 months. And we don't have anyone to help you, but we'll read it at the end. I'm like, okay. And you would think that I'd be like, yeah, I got a book deal. But like, no, it actually really sucked because now I have to write a whole new book to Ayurveda, start to finish, without repeating a single sentence that I wrote in the book that I wrote, that I was trying to get at, which was my modern version. So I was like, shit, I really screwed myself over on this one. And then writing a book that you're trying to not give your best ideas to is actually harder than writing a book that you are. And then eventually I was like, okay, I might die next year. We all might. So I'm just going to give all that I have to this book and just see what happens. So I did. And I literally just fully gave everything to writing that book. And even in writing the book, so much of the wisdom came through. And that's how I know that it's not my first lifetime doing this work. I would have questions on very specific things and just the answers would sort of come to me. So I wrote the book, and again, I didn't really know what would happen after. They didn't really pay me very much. And then eventually, which is a long story in itself, I saw Deepak Chopra at a conference and I walked on stage and I walked up to him and introduced myself to him. And then he wrote the foreword of the book. And then I was like, okay, still don't really know what this is going to do. And it came out and I just read everything I could about how do you do a book launch? How does this work? I really channeled my pitta, which did not come naturally to me. I very much considered myself like the vata, creative, idea, traveler, but not the pitta. But because my dharma was really on the line here, I had to bring the pitta through. So I started to do boxing and to eat a lot of ginger and actually shift myself into a pitta through my diet and lifestyle. And I did so many podcasts. I did everything I could. And the book started to be shared more and people started to resonate with it. And then the moment that it came out, I was like, okay, now it's time to write my modernized version, which is Eat, Feel, Fresh, which is the one that I truly believe is going to help so many people because it takes Ayurveda and makes it work for today's world. And even with that, I received so many no's. No, you can't shoot in India. No, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. And you just have to see that it's not always going to be this easy yes, yes, yes flow. Oftentimes that brink of achieving your dharma is when no one believes in you, no one cares, your own belief is on the line too. You're like, am I just like making this up right now? And I think when you hold on in those moments, that's when you experience the flow, the kriya. But I think that we have to go through those periods of uncertainty to find the certainty within ourselves.
You know what's crazy? After all these years of hosting Mind Love and talking to some of the world's leading experts, one of the biggest eye-openers for me has been just how much our gut affects, well, everything. When my gut feels good, my mind feels clearer, my intuition is stronger, and I just feel more balanced. And that's why I'm excited about Zoe, a science-backed nutrition company that is totally changing how we understand our gut health. They've created the most scientifically advanced at-home gut test and built the world's largest microbiome database. So when you get your results, you're not getting generic advice. You're getting insights about your body that other companies just don't have the data to provide. There's also just so much misleading health information out there. Food companies even pay influencers to promote ultra-processed foods as healthy. And that's why I love that Zoe relies purely on science. Real science. Their randomized controlled trial showed that participants were 4 times as likely to report better sleep and more energy, all thanks to the info from the largest microbiome database on the planet. So go to Zoe.com and find out what Zoe membership could do for you. And because you listen to Mind Love, you can use the exclusive code MINDLOVE10 to get 10% off membership. As a Zoe member, you'll get an at-home test kit and personalized nutrition program to help you make smarter food choices that support your gut. That's Zoe.com. Use MindLove10 at checkout. Trust your gut. Trust Zoe. Okay, the part where you were eating ginger and boxing to make the pitta energy come through is so cool. It's like ancient Ayurvedic biohacking. But it just reminds me of how important everything else going on in our lifestyle is for what we're trying to create. Everything is connected. And I know that one of the things that has been the most motivating to me is surrounding myself with other motivated people. So I am really fortunate to live in LA where there are so many people that are creating their lives on the unbeaten path. And I know that now your circle of friends is very much like that. I know you're in masterminds and we run in a lot of the same entrepreneur circles. But I'm wondering, did you have that type of support around you when you were first starting your path in Ayurveda? Or were you just kind of going rogue?
No, I had no friends actually, like not one at that point. And my parents were really against everything I was doing. So I was constantly fighting with them. So I didn't even have a parent to talk to. And I lived with my grandparents. And that's all I did. I just wrote, and Ayurveda became my friend. And that's why I'm still pinching myself that I even have friends and a community today. But at that point, I was like, you know what? The most important thing that matters to me is bringing this work out. And I kind of just gave everything I could to the book and to the work. And there could have been opportunities that I could have gone out and made friends, but it just wasn't my priority at the time. And I think that sometimes in life, it's not always going to be perfect balance. All I did was write and research and write during that time. And now that I think about it, if someone told me to write Idiot's Guide again, I was like, oh God, no, I couldn't. But there's seasons in life. And I think there's seasons where your Dharma calls everything of you. And there's seasons where it's more of your community. And there's seasons where it's more of your relationship. And there's seasons for everything else. I was really in the Pitta season, and now I've moved more into the Kapha season, which is taking a step back from just experiencing burnout from it. It's not that I recommend everyone just like give up everything and just work on their Dharma, but that level of dedication that I gave at that time is, I think, what has brought me to be able to even be friends with the kind of people. I mean, if I had not done that, Deepak Chopra would not have written a foreword of my book. If I went up to him and said, I have an idea for an Ayurveda book, he'd be like, oh, yeah, join the club. But the fact that I had finished it and it was being published by Penguin, a major publisher, and that was something I created on my own, I think that's what people are missing out on. I see so many people with wonderful ideas and they're not taking action on it. And at the end of the day, if it's not tangible, if it's not here for us to experience, what good is it going to do for the world?
Right. And I feel like so many of us have that vata energy, or at least that's what I related to the most when I first felt that fire to create something. It was like idea after idea after idea with not really the drive to follow through. And I feel like I hear that from other people a lot also. Maybe it's a millennial thing. I don't know, but the amount of times that I hear Mark Zuckerberg stole my idea for Facebook.
Right.
So, kind of how you brought that pitta energy so you could start getting stuff done. What are some other ways that we can biohack using Ayurveda to bring us out of the vata and more into the pitta and give us that drive and initiative?
Yeah, so I think that with add ginger to your diet, you could add spices to your diet, all things that are not like sriracha and like fake spices, but fennel and cumin and coriander and stuff. Not that that's going to like do the job for you, but these are just little things that can help. You can exercise more intensely. So I shifted from just doing yoga to doing high intensity interval training, boxing, spinning, things that had that more competitive edge to it, where I was sweating, where I was coming up to my own resistance of I can't push any harder on a daily basis. And when you're able to push your physical body to that point, then you're able to push your mind more easily too. And I essentially set a schedule for myself that I would just wake up, exercise, eat, and then write. And I had some clients at the time, but I wasn't getting distracted with anything. And again, I had 2 months to write a 400-page textbook. I don't think everyone that writes a book, though I do know a lot of my friends who are authors have also done similar things when you're writing a book, because it does take so much of you. But maybe if you have even a week, a vacation period of time that all you do is work on that thing. I think there's amazing power to focused thinking that even right now when I'm writing a book, if I have a podcast today, I can't write for the rest of the day, honestly, because my mind is not in the right space. My mind goes into responsive mode and not into creative channeling mode. So I have days that I do podcasts, I do my finances, whatever it is. It's more just like less of that creative stuff. And then I have days that I'm not communicating with people and all I'm doing is really just writing. And I get if you have I have a fiance, I have to communicate with him, but I'm not going to go out and do things and schedule in 2 hours of writing and leave. Personally, I've found that if you schedule your days with the doshas, have your vata creative days, your pitta just get shit done days, your kapha chill day, I find that that works really well. So maybe you do 2 vata days a week that you're just doing your creative stuff, your branding, your channeling, 2 pitta or maybe 3 pitta days that you're just getting stuff done that needs to be done, your social media posts, whatever it is. And then 1 kapha day a week that you're just relaxing and going to nature and recharging, because that's really important too.
Okay, I think I just had a mini breakthrough during this interview because I've had a lot to write for a project that I'm working on. But I've been struggling with balancing it a little bit the past few weeks because every time I sit down to write, I just feel blocked. But I think what's happening is that I'm not dedicating enough time just to that activity. So I think it would really help me to seclude myself a little bit more, focus only on that, start first thing in the morning, and like I said earlier, plan a little mountain trip for the cold, dry air. So for those of us who need to get into that creative energy more, whether we're writers or musicians or we're just creating something new, what are some other ways that we can use Ayurveda to bring us more into that vata energy?
Yeah, so for me, what makes me creative is to just go outside and walk, listen to music and walk. And I think that movement while being in nature, some people like to sit and meditate in nature. I like to walk. I feel like that's more of a meditation for me. So I'll walk and then just let my mind go a little. Instead of just being nothing, I just let it go. What does it want to think about? Go, okay, cool. Observing it, just letting the thoughts go. And then eventually, probably 20 minutes into my walk, it kind of is okay, I thought about the things I need to think about. And that's when higher thoughts come through. Let's say I'm thinking about, I don't know, a realization I had of something. I'll really think about it in a deeper level and let that come through. So I'm just sort of going into this space naturally, just letting my mind go. And then most of the time when I'm on a longer walk, I'll think about something that I start to have a lot of ideas about, and I almost get really excited about it. And that's how I know I have a podcast episode that is to come. So that's when the channel is coming through. And I either try to rush home so I can get on my mic and talk about it, or if I'm too far away, then I try to write as much as I can just on my phone so I can remember, because if I don't write it or say it, I probably will forget it. So it's never forceful. It's never something okay, 3, 2, 1 idea. It's just letting my mind go, being in nature, walking. And not every time I walk, I have a genius idea, but if I'm able to let go of, oh, Cindy said this and Sally did that, and I need to respond to that. If I'm able to let go of that, it happens very naturally. I guess just the hardest thing is to let go of the human stuff, which is why I recommend just have those pitta days. I still look at my emails every day, but I honestly will try to get as much as I can done first thing in the morning so that I don't have to think about it later on in the day. But I wouldn't have been able to schedule in an hour of being creative and then going back to that other mindset. It's just not enough time to let those thoughts come through. And even when you're writing, your first hour is probably not going to be your best. It's going to be when you've moved past that is when you're kind of taking out the debris, and then you're really able to go into the juice.
So the vata is really good for the creative. The pitta is really good for the getting shit done. What is the kapha good for when it comes to your purpose or your goals?
It's really the most important one. It's your life. And I think it's the one that we all overlook. I myself, for sure, have overlooked. And your kapha is your joy. It's your being. It's your heart. It's your family. It's love. It's just the indulgence of being alive. And so many of us deprive ourselves from that. The joy is not here. We are a pleasure deprived society. And what is the point of fulfilling your dharma if all you're doing is working and you're miserable? And so many of us, we skip it because we think that once I get this book done, once I get this accomplishment, then I'll be happy. And guess what? Nothing changes. The day after your book comes out, you have the same problems as you did the day before your book comes out. So that's when you have to go into the kapha and you have to go deeper and say, what really brings me joy? What really makes me feel alive? Am I just here to work and pay bills and lose weight? I don't think so. So the kapha is that sacred pause. It's honoring yourself enough to take a step back. So for me, I was just in Hawaii for 2 weeks, something I would have never done before. But I needed it because here in LA, I'm just so go, 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 go that it's hard for me to really take that step back. And I wasn't there to write. I was actually there to just be in nature, to just see where it took me. And I think it's so important for us to just reconnect with the earth, because when we're back to nature, we remember our own nature. I mean, that's why it's called your nature. It's your most natural self. And the questions that we have, what's my purpose? Why can't I find my soulmate? Why this? Why that? If you just let go of all of the stuff society has put on you, if you can just strip yourself from that, the answer is already there. They naturally come through. So being in nature helps us remember our true nature, and it allows for the vata to come through. Your best ideas never come when you're like, okay, universe, plan an idea on my head. I'm ready for it. It's always when you take that sacred pause, when you're not thinking about it, you're doing the dishes, you're on a walk, you're whatever, you're in a bath. That's when the idea comes through. So if we want better ideas, we need to take more pauses.
A couple years ago, I went to this psychedelics integration meeting. So it was for people who were using psychedelics for consciousness expansion. We didn't actually do psychedelics there, unfortunately, but we were learning what to do if we were in the experience and we needed more from it without actually taking more of whatever substance, or it was too much and we needed to take it down a notch. So if we needed more from an experience, we were supposed to deep breathe, do a breathing exercise, or even sing. And then if an experience became too much and we needed to take it down a notch, they told us to take our shoes off and touch our feet to the earth, whether we walk around in the grass or the dirt, or even just digging our hands into the dirt. But it's funny because I've used those practices more for other things in my life than I have for actually integrating psychedelics. So the other day I was feeling a little bit anxious, which I don't feel very often. And so I just took off my shoes and put my bare feet in the lawn. And I cannot tell you how good and grounding that felt.
Totally. I mean, we're so disconnected from Earth. Most of us never have our feet on the ground ever. I mean, you live in a big city. Where are you going to walk on? The park where all the dogs pee? So we're so disconnected from the Earth that our bodies don't know where we are, what time it is, what's going on, because we're not physically touching the planet that we are residing on. So it's so important to take your shoes off, recharge. The earth has negative ions and we have positive ions, so to rebalance that ionic charge, called earthing, has so many proven health benefits to it. I think if we all did that, there would be so much less dis-ease.
One of the biggest changes just in humanity over the last decade has been our devices, as you mentioned earlier, and our social media use. It seems everywhere we look, somebody has their tech neck going on and they're looking down at Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. Now, most of us are probably not going to give up social media, nor do I think they should. But what are some ways that we can use Ayurveda to balance out some of the effects that social media might be having on us?
Yeah, so social media is inherently vata. So it's ideas. It doesn't exist. It's not real. I think I'm connected, but I'm not really. I think I'm sitting with you, but I'm not really. It's all in the ethos. It's all in the mind. So that's really going to increase our vata because it's not real, because it's not physical, which moves slower. It's so fast. or scrolling through 10,000 people's mornings every morning. Like, what? Like, how could I have physically been able to do that? I couldn't. So it's taking us to this level that physically we couldn't before. Not that that's a bad thing. In a way, we are surpassing the physical body, which is what spiritual consciousness is all about. But it's how we're using it. We're often using it as an escape from what is going around us. This person's boring me, so I'm going to talk to these people who are cooler. Or this person's taking too long, so I'm going to do this and I'm going to be efficient. So we're not able to be present, and presence is a really important thing of happiness. But I don't think social media is a bad thing that a lot of people do. I think that personally, for me, it's done a lot more good than it has harm. I think it's a tool and it's how you use it. I mean, are you listening to podcasts like this? Are you connecting with people that inspire you? Are you able to set limits and parameters for yourself that you're not just like going on Insta story after Insta story after Insta story, but you're able to check in when maybe it is really idle time, like you're standing in line for something that there really isn't anything else that you could be doing, and you check it then, cool. Or you're using it to have connections with people, cool. But if you're using it to escape your life, if you're using it to make yourself feel worse about yourself, comparison, jealousy, I mean, again, social media can't make you compare yourself. It can't make you feel jealous. Only you can do that. So it's just going to be a magnifying glass for how you really feel about yourself. So I think that oftentimes we blame social media usage when it's really just our own issues that we're now projecting on social media. So if it is coming up, no problem. Maybe it is a good idea to take a break off social media, but not so you can stop being jealous of people, because you'll just find people on the street to be jealous of, but so you can have the time and space to go into whatever it is that's causing that problem.
I totally agree. I look at social media similar to how I view money. It's really access to more experiences. So it can be an amazing, wonderful thing that allows you to reach more people and accomplish your dreams and go more places, or it can amplify whatever crap we're already going through, and it can feed our addictions and feed our insecurities. But I think both of those things are such good reminders that no matter what is presented into our lives, we should always approach it with intention. So not only deciding how we want to use it, but bringing awareness to possible unintended consequences.
Totally. And when I was in Hawaii, I did not want to check social media. I would literally just forget about it for the whole day, which doesn't happen to me here in LA. Why? Because my surroundings were beautiful. I saw beaches and mountains and waterfalls. I didn't want to check my fucking phone. Whereas here, I'm just like looking at the cement and I have more work to do on my laptop. So I would rather go look at someone's vacation in Hawaii. So how can we design our life in a way so we don't need to escape from it? That's really what the main focus should be.
So looking at the span of your life from healing yourself to finding your purpose and to now maintaining it, how have your doshas transformed over time?
Yeah, so when I first started was very, very vata, then writing my 2 books and the podcast, a lot of pitta. And then after Eat Feel Fresh came out in October, I knew I was ready for the shift out of the pitta and into the kapha. And now I am in very much of a kapha phase of my life that I'm just more interested in relationships and grounding. And it's hard for me because I have a lot of planets in Capricorn, like my sun, moon, north node, 7 planets. I'm like, try not to start a new project, try not to work, like really trying to keep it as simple as possible, because simplicity for me is the ultimate source of joy. I think we overcomplicate things. We want more success, more money, more fame, more followers, more this, more that. And really what I found, it's less. How can I have less obligations, less restrictions, less stress on myself? I think that's actually success for what I believe. So now how can I create my lifestyle with that while still creating incredible content that impacts the lives of people, but without me being the martyr for that content, if that makes sense?
It does. I just feel like I relate. And mostly, I just feel proud of my body recently because I feel like I have such an even balance of the doshas compared to any other time in my life. So one of my doshas might throw on her dancing shoes and take over for a minute, but I feel like it's more in tune with the intention that I set for that day or the intention that I'm setting for the next period of my life rather than the other way around and letting what energy I have limit me from my dreams. And I do have to give credit to my routines. I think my routines are really what keep me in balance. So I'm curious for you, what are some of the things that you do on a daily basis or close to a daily basis that's based in Ayurveda that maybe the average person doesn't do?
Sure. So I meditate, I set my intention for the day, and I list what I'm grateful for. I stretch. Yoga is a part of Ayurveda, so yoga is important for me, as is meditation. I tongue scrape, which is removing the toxins, the white stuff called ama on your tongue to actually increase your digestion. I oil pull, which is the practice of essentially Ayurvedic mouthwash, putting a scoop of oil in your mouth, coconut oil, sesame oil, grapeseed oil, swishing around your mouth for anywhere from 1 to 2 minutes up to 20 minutes, depending on how long you have and how long you could put in your mouth. And that helps remove toxins without destroying the good bacteria the same way Listerine does. And I dry brush, not every day, maybe once a week, which is just taking a dry loofah and scraping the dead skin cells off your body. I every day put oil on my body, abhyanga, which is self-oil massage. So I really rub oil into my body after I take a shower. I've been using grapeseed oil recently because it really absorbs in your skin. Sometimes I use coconut oil when it's hot because it's cooling, sesame oil when it's winter because it's warming, vata balancing, and grapeseed oil is pretty neutral. So I've been using that. And I drink warm water first thing in the morning. I've been adding this doTERRA Digest Zen essential oil to it, which has all of the Ayurvedic herbs in it in oil form. So it's really, really dense. And I just, even when I'm traveling, get hot water and add a couple drops of that and maybe add a splash of almond milk or something if feel like it. And then I start my day. And I am trying to now stop working earlier. I used to be one who would work past midnight regularly. And now I try to stop working by like 7, and I don't really start working till 12. So I have later days because I really like to do my morning practice in my day, exercise, and just like set the vibration right in the morning for the rest of the day. I have found that that works really well for me. Like if I just wake up and run to a meeting or something, I'm just not my highest self for the rest of the day. So again, that just depends on you and knowing what your prime hours are. My prime hours are the latter vata times of day between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. That's when I create my best work. That's when I'm the most aligned. So knowing what time is your best time and then creating your schedule so you can revolve that time to be open for you.
Okay, tongue scraping. I know another guest in the past has brought this up, but for some reason this week it keeps popping up, which is my sign that I need to take action on it. I know that tongue scraping removes bacteria from the tongue, but what other benefits does it have?
Yeah, so when you scrape your tongue, you remove the white mucus that's on your tongue. And as we know, we begin digestion the moment that food enters our mouths. So if food is entering your mouth and there's this coating covering your tongue, then your tongue is not able to sense what food you're eating. It's not able to see, okay, it's this type of digestive enzyme needed. I need amylase. I need this level of digestive acid. It's like there's a condom over your tongue, essentially. So when you're stripping the mucus off of your tongue is able to sense, okay, this is what the food is. It's this level of carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and then create the right digestive environment needed for that specific meal.
I hate the word mucus, and that was gross. And now all I can feel is mucus on my tongue. So I am purchasing a tongue scraper the moment this is over. If any other wild women want to join me, I'm doing a shit ton of research, and the one I pick will be in the show notes at mindlove.com/069. Well, thank you, Sahara, for all the wisdom that you shared today and for just inspiring us with your drive and showing us what's possible when you really are in alignment with your Dharma. So for the wild women and men that are resonating with you, where can they connect with you online?
Yeah, so the best place is to take my dosha quiz on my website. I am sahararose.com, Sahara like the desert. You'll see it right on top, and you can take the quick quiz. It will tell you what percentage of each dosha you are in your mind and body, and email you a free 3-day mini course. And I have a podcast called Highest Self Podcast, where I talk all about the doshas with relationships and business and also all sorts of spiritual topics. And my Instagram is at I am Sahara Rose. If you heard me here on Melissa's podcast, just shoot me a DM. I would love to hear from you.
Okay, so I did order the tongue scraper right after I got off the interview with Sahara. And it's awesome. First of all, it's pretty gross how much really does come off of your tongue. And second of all, it might be in my head, but I almost feel like I am absorbing flavors more. Food just tastes more vibrant all of a sudden. So I did the research on perfect width and material and sharpness, and I'll share with you the one that I picked in the show notes at mindlove.com/069. I personally really loved this episode, and ever since I've been trying to get into my intuitive Ayurvedic knowledge by really tuning into what my body feels each day. I don't think we do this enough. And then figuring out which foods will pacify either the excess or the deficiency in whichever dosha is out of balance. Sahara's modern day approach to Ayurveda is so awesome, so I highly recommend her book, Eat, Feel Fresh, which of course will also be in the show notes at mindlove.com/069. If you're enjoying this podcast, share the love. You can tell someone who loves podcasts how Mind Love is your favorite. You can share the link by tapping the little share button, or even screenshot it and share it on social. And don't forget to tag Mind Love Podcast. For some extra inspiration between episodes, sign up for the Morning Mind Love at mindlove.com or text morning to 444-999. Thanks for giving your mind a little love today, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning into Your Higher Frequency with Mind Love. Head to mindlove.com for a free gift to keep your vibes up until next week.